Welcome to Books for Success. Today, we're delving into the wisdom within A Passage to India by E.M. Forster. A Passage to India explores the complex dynamics between the British colonialists and the Indian citizens in the setting of Chandrapur, a fictional city in British India. It delves into themes of friendship, culture clash, and the quest for understanding across cultural divides. Who's it for? History enthusiasts, fans of British literature, cultural studies scholars. Before we begin, subscribe and ring the bell for notifications if you want to keep receiving the knowledge of book summaries about health, wealth, love, psychology, and much more. Don't be shy about dropping your book suggestions for us to summarize. Also, you can use this video as an audiobook summary. Let's grow and succeed together. What's in it for me? Dive into the turbulent history of India. A Passage to India invites readers into the heart of the British Raj, an era of intense colonial rule and cultural intersection. Here, the quest for a genuine human connection takes center stage against the backdrop of historical upheaval and social conventions. One is introduced to a canvas where characters of varied backgrounds strive for understanding amidst cultural and racial divides. It's a narrative that not only unfolds in the verdant landscapes and bustling towns of early 20th century India but also in the complex inner worlds of its protagonists. From the tranquility of the Marabar caves to the turmoil in the British clubs, the setting becomes a character in itself, encapsulating the beauty and struggles of colonial India. For those captivated by history, culture, and the enduring complexity of human relationships, this summary offers a passage not just to India, but into the depths of its intertwined souls. Mosque. The story takes place in the bustling British Raj of the early 20th century and begins as Adela quested and Mrs. Moore land in the fictional city of Chandrapur. Adela, an inquisitive Englishwoman, is on a quest of sorts. She's considering marrying Rani Heaslip, the local magistrate, but she's not quite sold on the idea, or perhaps, on him. She's looking for the real India, hoping to peer beyond the Raj's manicured lawns and dinner parties to understand the country's heart and soul. Then there's Mrs. Moore, Rani's mother, a kind and spiritual widow who might seem like she's just along for the ride but is actually on her own complex journey of understanding and connection. The city of Chandrapur appears as a dichotomy, split between the British civil station, with its shining bungalows and exclusive clubs, and the buzzing, teeming Indian section that throbs with life and mystique. It's in this setting that our visitors meet Dr. Aziz, a young, effervescent, and slightly naive Indian physician. Dr. Aziz is enchanted by the English ladies, especially by Mrs. Moore, whom he meets by chance at a mosque one night. It was Mrs. Moore's courtesy and respect for his religion which struck a chord with him. The seemingly harmonious relationship between the newcomers and Dr. Aziz hints at the potential for cross-cultural understanding and respect. Yet, the society they inhabit is riddled with prejudices and expectations. British officials, like the obtuse Rani Heaslip, remain aloof and their racism thinly veiled in bureaucratic detachment. In their quest to mingle with original residents of India, Adela and Mrs. Moore find themselves at a rather peculiar gathering organized by Mr. Turton, Chandrapur's city tax collector. Intentions to bridge the gap between the British and Indians fall flat yet. Cyril Fielding, the enlightened principal of the local government college, seems to navigate beyond these cultural barricades with ease. Fielding, sensing an opportunity for genuine connection, invites Adela and Mrs. Moore to a tea party with Narayan Godbal, a Hindu Brahmin professor. At Adela's request, Fielding warmly extends this invitation to Dr. Aziz as well. Just as the event rounds into a significant moment of cultural harmony, it's abruptly jolted by the arrival of Rani Heaslip, who brusquely disperses the gathering because Adela was unattended with Dr. Aziz and Professor Godbal. Adela's insistence to see the real India led Aziz to the organization of an expedition to the ancient Marabar caves. Although at great expense, Aziz follows through to honor his word. Caves. The harmony that began to bloom among our eclectic group meets the ominous, echoing chambers of the Marabar caves. Dr. Aziz, ever the gracious host, hoping to deepen the visitors' appreciation for India's mystique. However, as they delve deeper into the caverns, something shifts. Mrs. Moore is hit by a sudden claustrophobia while the visceral and unsettling echo of the cave leaves her rattled with existential dread. She then opts out, leaving Adela and Dr. Aziz and their local guide. As they continue the expedition, Adela asks Aziz whether he has more than one wife. She assumes that, because he is a Muslim, he must have multiple. Disconcerted by her bluntness and, perhaps, ignorance, he ducks out to compose himself. As he returns, he finds the guide by himself and that Adela has ventured into another cave alone. He has a quarrel with the guide and stumbles upon Adela's abandoned field glasses. Aziz pockets them and notices Adela at a distance, disheveled and distressed, chatting with Miss Derrick, a young Englishwoman working for an Indian Maharani who had just arrived by car with Cyril Fielding. Aziz dashes down to join Fielding, but Adela and Miss Derrick drive off, leaving Fielding, Mrs. Moore and Aziz to return to Chandrapur by train. Upon his return, Aziz is thrown into jail, accused of sexually assaulting Adela. The accusation becomes a catalyst of racial tensions and prejudices, and that sets the town ablaze. She alleges that Aziz followed her into the cave and that she fended him off by swinging her field glasses at him, the field glasses he had in his possession. When Fielding dares to stand by Aziz, he finds himself branded a traitor, cut off from his own community. The trial makes apparent the deep divides between the British colonial establishment and the Indian population, but sees Adela on the witness stand, still disoriented by the cave's haunting echo. She admits she is uncertain of who really attacked her and, despite great demand to persist in her accusation, she withdraws the charge. When the case is dismissed, Heaslip breaks off his engagement to Adela and she finds herself needing to take refuge at Fielding's place until she could beat a retreat back to England. Temple. After the tumultuous trial, the residue of betrayal and misunderstanding sticks around, creating a rift between Aziz and Fielding, whom he once considered a true ally. The heart of the conflict lies in Fielding's compassionate, albeit naive approach to Adela quested after the chaos she wrought. Aziz, who narrowly escaped a life-altering conviction, can hardly contain his fury when he learns of Fielding's continued association with Adela. Fielding believes that seeking a form of reconciliation is the noble path, persuading Aziz to refrain from any form of financial compensation from Adela. The gesture is intended as one of magnanimity, but it only deepens the wedge between the two men, and Fielding departs for England. Convinced that Fielding has made the journey to marry Adela, lured by her financial assets. Bitter by this perceived ultimate betrayal, Aziz vows to shutter his heart to any future friendships with white people, a resolve born from pain and disillusionment. A couple of years later, and we find Aziz in a new chapter of his life, nestled in the Hindu-ruled state of Mao. His talents and compassion have elevated him to the prestigious role of the Raj's chief physician. It's here, amidst the fresh beginnings and a semblance of peace, that Fielding returns, not with Adela as Aziz had begrudgingly anticipated, but with Stella, Mrs. Moore's daughter from her second marriage. Despite the tidal wave of emotions Aziz feels upon seeing Fielding, anger, betrayal, lingering camaraderie, he still finds himself inexplicably drawn to his old friend. However, the reunion is tinged with a bittersweet realization. The bond they once shared, now frayed and strained, cannot be fully mended in the shadow of colonial rule. Aziz, wiser and more cautious, understands that true friendship, unmarred by the ugliness of political and racial discord, can only flourish in an India freed from the shackles of British rule. Analysis. The novel is divided into 3 parts: mosque, caves, and temple, each symbolizing distinctive phases, not just of their journey but also of the evolving dynamics between the British visitors and the Indian citizens, symbolizing the spiritual and philosophical undercurrents of the story. The mosque section paints an idyllic picture of potential friendship and understanding across cultural divides. The caves chapter is the fulcrum on which the storyline pivots. The Marabar Caves, with their echoing chambers that distort sounds and meanings, serve as a powerful metaphor for the miscommunications and cultural misunderstandings that plague human relationships. The trial that follows the incident in said caves is less a quest for justice and more a theatrical display of the Raj's racial divides. It becomes a public spectacle that draws out the worst of colonial prejudices and assumptions. The resolution unfolds in the temple section, where the aftermath of the trial reveals the irreversible transformations within the characters and the socio-cultural landscape of Chandrapur. A Passage to India is more than a narrative about a personal misunderstanding. It is a profound exploration of the complexities of British-Indian relations during the colonial period. Through detailed character studies and the overarching theme of the search for true connection in a divided world, the novel critiques the imperialist mindset and ponders the feasibility of friendship across vast cultural divides. The burgeoning friendships in the story serve as the novel's backbone, promising to build bridges between the Indian and British communities. On a micro level, the novel's conflict leads to a complete reassessment of the relationships between main characters, particularly between Aziz and Cyril Fielding. On a more amplified context, the British community in Chandrapur, already predisposed to distrust the Indian populace, rallies around Adela, seeing in her accusations a reaffirmation of their prejudiced views. Dr. Aziz, who represents the educated Indian middle class, eager to be seen as an equal by his British counterparts yet continually reminded of the deep chasm between colonizer and colonized, finds himself ensnared in a nightmarish web of colonial jurisprudence, turning his previous cordiality with the British into resentment. The novel masterfully captures the precipice on which British-Indian relations teeter, a landscape where misunderstandings and false perceptions can quickly spiral into conflict, and where the hope for unity is constantly at odds with the entrenched realities of empire. The Marabar incident, thus, becomes not just a dramatic pivot in our story but a symbol of the fragile boundaries between friendship and animosity. Forster's account of the Marabar Caves incident is less about the specifics of what happened within the cave and more about the psychological and societal echoes it causes, echoes that reverberate through the lives of all the characters involved, driving them apart and illustrating the tragic complexities of human attempts to bridge cultural and racial divides. Final words. Let's recap. The journey of Adela Quested and Mrs. Moore to understand the real India quickly spirals into a saga of accusation, racial tension, and lament over lost connections in A Passage to India. Their crossing paths with Dr. Aziz illustrates the harsh realities of colonialism, showing the chasm it creates between cultures. Ultimately, Forster crafts a narrative not just about the failure of the British to truly know India, but about the universal struggle for genuine human connection across divides of misunderstanding and prejudice. Thanks for being part of our insightful voyage. If our summary piqued your interest, we encourage you to dive into the complete book for a deeper understanding. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more content if you're new here, and share it with others who might find it valuable. Keep on reading, discovering, and advancing until our next adventure.